Good morning. My name is Matthew R. Kearns, and I serve as the Associate Director of Member and Alumni Relations for Focus St. Louis. Focus St. Louis is a nonprofit organization. Our mission is to educate leaders, connect leaders, and facilitate important conversations for St. Louis and our surrounding region. Today is our third sneak peek into our new series, Focus Elevate Leadership, a continuing education program designed to fulfill our purpose of continuing to inspire and equip leaders. These professional development courses will immerse participants in breakthrough thinking in order to grow their confidence, knowledge, and networks. Today's topic, the power of resiliency, why we need it and how we develop it. Our guests, Dr. Cheryl Throgmorton and Dr. David Rowan from the Psychological Associates. The panel will deliver content for the first section of the session, and directly following their presentation, they will take questions. They ask that you submit your questions through the Q&A panel at the bottom of your screen and add any comments during the presentation to the chat panel, also at the bottom of your screen. All questions I'll field at the end and read them for answering. We'll try to make it to everyone's questions, but if we're unable to answer yours, please email me at matthewk@focus-stl.org, and I'll talk with the panelists and send you a reply. Please turn all microphones off. Focus St. Louis would like to thank lead sponsor Citi and presenting sponsor Daugherty Business Solutions for this opportunity. And now, good morning to Dr. Cheryl Throgmorton and Dr. David Rowan.
Thank you, Matthew and Focus St. Louis. We are so grateful for this opportunity to partner with you and to learn with everyone on this webinar this morning. As we get started, David and I would love for you to comment in the chat where you're joining us from, what city you live in, and what organization you work for.
Yes, good morning, everyone. It's Cheryl. It's great to see you this morning.
Likewise, David.
Yeah, as always, you look ready to go.
Great.
Yeah, let's go ahead and put up the deck.
All right.
Oh, this is great. We're seeing folks from all over, St. Louis, St. Peter's, somebody from De La Salle, Mercy, Nestle Purina, oh, San Francisco, Bismarck, North Dakota. Fantastic, from all over, from many time zones and many companies. It's great. Welcome, everyone.
Fantastic. I'm seeing a lot of our current coworkers and again, some of my former coworkers at Mercy. So it's great to see everyone this morning. What we're going to cover is we are going to cover like what is resiliency, and we are going to discuss like how to develop it for ourselves and then how to build it in others. And David and I are going to leave you with one practice that you can implement from here for each, building ourselves and building others. Resiliency, so we had a lot of fun going through quotes to really communicate what does resiliency mean. So we'd love to invite you to weigh in on which one of these quotes resonates most with you. And in its simplest definition, resiliency is the ability to bounce back from stress. Resiliency, it centers around two main concepts: facing adversity and adapting effectively. On any average day, resiliency is going to be a great quality to have, but researchers emphasize that in times of crisis, it's especially critical. I don't think anyone would argue that it is especially important right now as we face all the challenges of the coronavirus on ourselves, our families, our teams, our organizations, our communities, and quite honestly, the globe. There's also a wealth of research that suggests that when we are more resilient, we're going to have higher levels of well-being, higher levels of hope, satisfaction, organizational commitment, and even job performance.
And I would weigh in and just say, you know, my favorite quote, Cheryl, and you probably remember this from our fun conversations about preparing, is the Michelle Obama quote, that grief and resilience live together. I just feel that that is such a simple and true statement.
Yes, absolutely. I think that one resonated most with me as well. And before David and I dive into more of the content, we want to get a sense for where is everyone at right now. We're going to do a simple poll. How would you rate your current level of resiliency? And we're going to have you weigh in. There's a lot of like, are we born with this quality or can we develop it? So you've got a couple of questions there, and we invite you. Thank you, Matthew, for pulling up the poll for us. And as you all weigh in, I'll just share an example. I have been at every levels of this spectrum in the course of 1 week. I had a recent significant loss. One of my good friends passed away, and my resiliency was really low. It's been medium through a lot of this. I haven't been feeling my best. I've been coughing. I think it's from seasonal allergies. But it's also been high, engaging with David and my colleagues at Psychological Associates to create things like this have really, help give new meaning to my work. So, I think it's an example that we can be on any spectrum at any given moment. So we want to check in and see where you're at right now. And Matthew, if you could reveal the results, that would be fantastic.
And Cheryl, I just have to say, I agree with you on everything you've said. And for me today, my resilience feels strong, but I know that there have been days where it hasn't. And so I think like you, I've felt the spectrum. And so it's interesting to watch myself go up and down and work on my own resilience every day. Yeah,
absolutely. And it looks like our group is pretty medium to high. And, and I'm glad that you all think that it's something that we can develop. And David, I'm going to invite you to tackle that poll response and to go on to this notion of, is it nature or nurture?
Yeah, absolutely. So resiliency is a subject that psychologists have studied for a number of years and developed ways of assessing it. And through those assessments, we've discovered, and this won't be a surprise to this audience, through the poll you all indicated, that it certainly is, it includes things that are both sort of natural to us or states, and it includes things that we learn along the way. It's similar. You can think of it like physical attributes. Some of us may be born with more sort of natural skills with balance or athleticism, but all of us can decide, hey, if I want to get stronger, if I want to run faster, I can go to the gym and make it a habit, and I can build my physical skillfulness. The same is true of resilience. Once you learn about the different elements and aspects of resilience, you can consciously choose to build your skills in those areas. So whether one skill may come more naturally to you and you can emphasize that and focus your time and energy in that area, another skill may not come as naturally to you. And so you might choose to spend more time trying to build that skill up. So it's important to know that we as individuals can learn and develop our resiliency skills for ourselves. It's important to know as leaders that we can build the resilience of others around us. And of course, we'll talk about that today. And then it's important to know as leaders that our organizations can become more resilient and we can have an impact that goes beyond our own team in building the resilience of our organizations. And of course, as Cheryl was saying, in this moment in history, that's more important than ever to have highly resilient organizations. Well, let's talk a little bit about elements of our own resilience. And I just want to let you guys comment in the chat if you could. Think about, as I was mentioning before, if you want to get stronger or faster, you go to the gym and you lift weights, or you go for a run, and you make it a habit. What things have you already been doing in your life, knowing where your resilience strengths may be, or where you may want to build up more strength, what habits have you already been doing to practice your own resiliency and build your own resiliency? And we'll just let you share those in the chat while I start to talk through some of the core concepts and terms. So you've probably all noticed in your LinkedIn and your Facebook and all of the different information coming in that folks have been talking about the topic of resiliency quite a bit lately. And, we often see things like, make sure you get good sleep, make sure you get good exercise, take care of your body. Those kinds of things are certainly help you become more resilient. But we wanted to dig deeper and share some things that we maybe haven't seen as much out there in the literature and in Facebook feeds and whatnot. So, so let's talk a little bit about the core resiliency skills. And these are terms from psychology. We'll define them as we go and give some examples. So let's start with cognitive reappraisal. Said simply or in different terms, this means using balanced thinking. I'm sure all of us have had moments during the course of this life-changing, world-changing event where our thoughts have gone to extremes. We may have thought, oh my gosh, how am I going to handle COVID-19 and how it's impacting my business and my family? And our minds may have strayed to some extreme thinking. And in those moments, we may not have felt particularly resilient. Well, by using cognitive reappraisal or rebalancing, recalibrating your thoughts, you can bring yourself back to a middle ground and remind yourself maybe that while it's a significant event and certainly is changing things, maybe it's not quite as extreme as you originally thought, and you can find that balance zone. The next skill is emotion regulation. This is a term psychologists use for how you can experience your emotions without being overcome or overwhelmed by them. Some of you may have heard a psychologist say, feel the feeling, but choose the behavior. And that's a simple saying that I actually use regularly with myself because all of us have had the experience of feeling emotionally overwhelmed, whether it was overwhelmed with worry and not sleeping well and your mind racing over thoughts of, gosh, how has this changed my business? How has it changed all the people I care about, all the people I'm trying to serve in the mission that I have in the organization that I work for? And so we may get caught up in those emotions and we may not be operating or performing in an optimal way. And so part of building your resilience is your own capacity to feel concern, worry, anxiety, to take those deep breaths, and then to help yourself choose your behaviors actively rather than being reactive or overwhelmed by your behaviors. And I'll just mention that we do have some free webinars on emotional intelligence, which is a complementary skill that some folks may want to learn about and utilize. And cognitive reappraisal and emotion regulation are both part of leveraging and using your emotional intelligence to be more resilient. The next skill we want to mention is active coping. And active coping means it's about stress management. Rather than avoiding things or putting them off or not confronting difficult challenges, it's about saying, you know what, no, I'm going to face into these tough times. And so you might think, gosh, instead of not looking at my email because I'm afraid of being overwhelmed by how many are coming in, or not calling that important client and seeing how are they because you're worried what they might say, or not reaching out to that direct report or that colleague who maybe was a little down in the dumps and you're thinking, gosh, I don't know how they're doing. I don't know if I want to get into a long conversation with them. Active coping means looking at the problem, breaking it down, realizing that you can take it on, developing a plan for yourself, and then taking some actions to face into it. And finally, and this is one we actually want to spend a little bit more time on and talk about how you can build your toolkit, and that is self-efficacy. And self-efficacy means believing we are effective in the world, that we have the ability to do things to change the environment around us and to positively influence how things are going. It's positively influencing the material world. It's also influencing the people we interact with every day. And those who have the ability to use cognitive appraisal, emotion regulation, active coping, and self-efficacy are folks who have strong resilience skills and tend to be able to bounce back. So these are the kinds of skills we want to build in ourselves, coach in others, and grow in our business. You know, right now with COVID-19, we certainly can't just make it go away. And sometimes we may start to get down in the dumps and think there's not much we can do about it. But through building these skills, and particularly with self-efficacy, we can remember and remind ourselves that we can have a positive impact. I know one thing that's been heartening for me, and I'll be curious to hear, Cheryl, if you have thoughts on this, and that is, I've looked at Facebook and I've looked at LinkedIn and I've seen images of musicians going out onto their balcony and playing music for their neighbors in Spain. And those musicians could have stayed inside and said, well, I'm just a musician. The only people who are needed right now are doctors and nurses and medical professionals. I'll just stay inside. But no, the musician thought, I've got a gift to give the world. It can have a positive impact. I'm going to go out and I'm going to do something. So all of us have a gift that we can give, a way that we contribute, something we can do positively. And it's through those actions that we can feel more empowered and feel more resilient and buoy the spirits of others. Cheryl, your thoughts on that?
I just want to, make sure that we comment on all the beautiful things that came in on chat. And I realize some of you just did it to us as panelists, but, as we go through this and as David gets ready to share a series of questions that you can use to really reflect on your self-efficacy, we encourage you to continue doing the things that are working, listening to the relaxing music, getting good night's sleep, gratitude, prayer, if that's your practice. And again, like there was, one is like, I'm really struggling and I want to appreciate that this could be, as Amanda responded to Muriel, like this can be a good first step. And we hope that what we provide you today will give you a way to reflect and some practices that you can use to build your resiliency. So thank you, and keep the connections, keep the comments coming in. So thank you.
Yeah, I'd echo what Cheryl said. We all have had good days. We've all had rough days. And we've even had days where we started them rough and they got better. So I apologize. It looks like my internet connection was a little spotty there. I'm sorry. Am I back now, Cheryl?
Yes, you are.
Okay, I apologize for that. We're all going to have to show some resilience and hang in there with my Wi-Fi and my Zoom, and hopefully it stays strong for the remainder of the session. You all may be familiar with a video that went around a few years ago. It was a commencement speech from a military leader, Admiral William H. McRaven. And he talked about, in his commencement speech, a habit he got into early in his life, in his military career, that helped him feel a sense of self-efficacy. And it was really simple. He said, start your day every day by making your bed. And then you may think, well, that's silly. How can the road to success and resilience be built on making my bed every morning? What does it matter if my bed's a little bit messy? But the way he described it, it's one thing you can do to show yourself that you have efficacy in the world, that you can do things to make your life and your space better. And so what we want to do is we want to talk about other skills you can use to build your self-efficacy backpack. We've heard, or to fill your self-efficacy backpack, we've heard that this is going to be a long haul, COVID-19. So we all need to be ready to be resilient for quite some time. So we've got some questions we want you to reflect on and think about, what could you put in your self-efficacy backpack? It starts with your core values. No matter what challenge you're going through, no matter what difficult situation, you always have your values that guide your decisions and maybe have got you into the profession that you're in, or the missions that you want to accomplish with your business or your organization, the ways you give back to everyone around you. So you can start by writing down a list of your core values and letting yourself know what base you stand on. Where's your firm ground? Then check in and see, well, what motivates me? What do I get excited about? How can I be enthusiastic again? Where does my enthusiasm come from? So what motivates you is a great question to ask and something to put in your self so that you know how to get re-energized. All of us have knowledge, skills, and abilities. That musician on the balcony in Spain playing for their neighbors has skills and abilities, but all of us can do something. And in doing something for others, we build our sense of efficacy and our sense of resilience and our sense of value, which is so important right now. We all want to feel like we're adding value and doing more for others. We've all been through a hard time. Maybe nothing like this. I've never been through anything like COVID-19 before, but I've been through some tough times personally and professionally, and I know how I got through it. Think back to those moments that were tough for you. Who did you talk to? Who did you lean on? What habits did you use to pick yourself up? Did you go for a run? Did you get some exercise? Did you, as Cheryl said, did you pray for a moment or reflect on something that inspires you? Who can I support? One thing that's so true for adults is we need meaningful work. We need to contribute to our communities, and we need to know that we're doing something for others. It may seem simple. It may just be people inside your house who you're trapped up there with, you know. It may be your neighbors. It may be that one coworker who's been a little quiet you can reach out to. It may be that customer or colleague you haven't spoken to in a while. There's got to be someone in your world who you can support, who you can give a meaningful contribution to. And that
Uh-oh, we've lost David. Can you guys hear me okay? Well, let's continue. And again, David is running the slides, and I can continue to go. But some of the further questions are, you know, who needs my talents and my gifts? What material resources do I have? And it's important to note that resources, we all have different levels of resources. And again, a question, you know, what can we do? What can we create? And again, I apologize. We're going to have to, we will give you the slides. We will send those out afterwards. I'm going to continue, you know, and it looks like David's getting back logged in. So as we transition from...
I apologize. I'm so sorry I dropped off. Let me get my screen share back on and I can get Cheryl going.
So while we're transitioning from developing resiliency for ourselves to building it for our teams, we invite you, just as you did before, what are some of the things that you do for others, that you're doing for your family, for your coworkers, for your organizations? So we want you to weigh in on that, all panelists and attendees. What are some of the things that you are doing to build resiliency in others? So we want to see some of those coming through in the chat. I love it. Reach out and listen is going to be a critical thing to do. I love it, like helping your daughter build a garden, a thinking of, you know, words of encouragement, taking time to play. I love that. I need to do more of that. Having video conversations. So there's a lot of great things that you guys are doing, and we encourage you to continue to do some of those things. As we go to the next slide, David, you know, just fostering an environment where there is social support, that you are engaging, you are encouraging connection. You know, we believe that this can happen even in a remote setting. So I'm glad you guys are doing video calls and video conferencing, building on trust and enabling cooperation, being optimistic and positive, encouraging joy and laughter. Leaders, and I think all of us are leaders. So leaders and organizations can promote resiliency within their teams by, promoting mindfulness, gratitude. You could give that series of questions that David just went to your coworkers and reflect on them as a team. And we encourage you to continue to give the encouragement, to do the cards and things like that. I also want to spend some time just commenting on the importance of laughter and enjoy. Finding those joyful moments in the face of adversity is critical. And I know I've got some former coworkers from Mercy on here. There's a great example similar to what David talked about with the musicians on the balconies. There was a group of nurses from Mercy Springfield Hospital who they were doing the TikTok dances. It actually went viral. It was featured on a morning show. And, our healthcare workers are facing tremendous strain and stress right now. So by encouraging that group of nurses to dance, it provided stress release, resiliency building, not only for them, but for everyone who viewed it. And it's important to note that expressions of joy and inspiration come in a lot of different forms. Not everyone's expected to be a cheerleader, but leaders need to maintain an attitude of optimism that there's almost always good that comes from crisis. An example, like building on what's going on in healthcare, the fact that so many people are hand sewing masks, what could have just been a couple of people has really become a movement, and everyone's getting involved. Some of you who are on this call may know that I spent 19 years working at 3 great health systems prior to joining Psychological Associates. Healthcare workers, they were already stressed out before facing this crisis. And you'd think like, oh, facing this crisis, they're going to, they're going to break. But no, we've seen the opposite. The fact that it gives us the opportunity, the time to pause and reflect and to really show our esteem and our gratitude for what they do, it gives them a chance to really reflect on why they got in healthcare in the first place. What are my values? What's important to me, like David just reviewed. So, so it gives us a chance to really boost our resiliency by boosting others. And before we go over our recommended practice for implementing boosting resiliency in others, I think it's important to note that, when it comes to developing resiliency within a team or an organization, it's important to meet every individual where he or she is. We all have different levels of resources. We're all likely in different places. Different things are causing stress for us, and we need different supports to navigate the stress and the change. Change happens one person at a time. Everyone's experience with what's going on is going to be different. So even though we might, you might be doing a team-wide effort or an organization-wide effort, it really requires attention to the individual needs and differences. At PA, we like to say we need to know how to help different people differently. So it's a really a message to be inclusive in our practices and to do what they need, not what we think they need.
Cheryl, I want to just sort of highlight that, underline it, and put an exclamation point next to it, and say I'm practicing resilience right now. I do.
Exactly.
I'm sorry that my Wi-Fi dropped out. I did everything I could in advance to try and make sure it wouldn't. I worked on my bandwidth, turned everything else off in the house. But of course, things happen, things that we can't control.
Exactly.
And so I'll just share with you guys, when my Zoom went out, I had a momentary panic. I thought, oh no. But you know what I did? I went into problem solving mode. And you know what I'm doing right now? Even as I'm talking to you, I'm talking to myself. I'm talking myself through it. I'm saying, hey, David, it's okay. It's all right. You're back. Everybody's fine. It was just a little lost Wi-Fi for a couple minutes. It's not the end of the world. So you could probably see I'm blushing a little because I'm a little embarrassed. But you know what? I'm sure everyone's had moments like this, right? We've been on 100 Zoom meetings. We've had phone calls that dropped. We thought we were going to get connected with someone, and our cat stepped on the keyboard and turned our Zoom meeting off. Whatever it was. So I just want to encourage everyone to kind of think about that in those terms. All of us have that moment that's happened where things didn't go as planned, from big to minor. And we all have that capacity for resilience. And so I'm loving the chats. I've been watching the chats and seeing all this stuff folks are doing. Everything from sewing masks, as you were saying, Cheryl, to Zooming and Skyping with old friends, to checking in on neighbors, looking through the window with a wave. So there's so many great things that folks are doing.
Yeah. So David, I was amazed at how quickly you got back on. So I was like, okay, how can I get the slides up that fast? So thank you for your resiliency. And again, I just want to, it sounds like there's some fun things that everyone is doing, wearing, hats or silly things. I know in our huddle this morning, we wore our favorite sports team gear. So we want you to continue to do those things. And again, David and I also want to challenge you to be purposeful, and we want you to increase giving meaningful recognition. Again, earlier when David talked about filling our backpacks, now we can kind of share, there might be some supply in our backpack that we want to share with someone else. And the tool for increasing resiliency. So some of you, I think it's a way to really refine the feedback process. And again, this really comes from research done by PA with a group of critical care nurses. But I think we can all agree that it would apply to any industry, any level of coworker. And it's a matter of being really purposeful with our feedback, to give really meaningful recognition, to say, what our coworker did, how it made a difference. And importantly, to the point that David and I were stressing, is that it needs to be individualized. It needs to be given in a way that's going to be receptive and well received by the receiver. Meaningful recognition is a practice that really is well rooted within our Q4 leadership. That is the core of our material at Psychological Associates. The practice focuses on the leader's awareness of others' behavior as well as their own, and that speaks to that emotional intelligence that David mentioned earlier. And it's sizing up, the ability to size up and to determine what's meaningful to them, to the people we are giving the recognition to. This is backed, like I mentioned, by a lot of research. And, again, while the purpose of demonstrating meaningful recognition is to recognize your coworker, your colleague, I would add, even your boss, the benefits can extend much further. When we recognize people in a meaningful way, it shifts our focus from the bad things that are going on and helps us realize that there are a lot of great things going on across a lot of industries, and there's a lot to celebrate every day, and perhaps especially in this time of crisis.
Absolutely, Cheryl. And if I could tag on to what you just said and loop it back around to one of where we kind of started. We talked at the beginning about, is resiliency, is it nature or is it nurture? Are you born with it, or can you learn it, and can it grow? And of course, there's all kinds of studies and literature that show that resilience can be grown. And those of you who are educators have probably read about grit. That was a theme in education for a number of years recently, and about how to help kids in the classroom show more grit and determination, stick-to-itiveness. And they talked about, how do you talk to kids? And one thing you do is, instead of focusing on maybe some nature elements like, gosh, you're smart, or boy, you're just so clever, you're always going to get the right answer. Instead, you give feedback to kids about what their behavior is, because behavior is something we can all do something about. It's something we can control and where we can show efficacy. And so this exact script, what they did, how it impacted the world, what their efficacy was, and how it had a meaningful impact to you or those around you, that's that nurture element of building resiliency. And in watching out for it and noticing it, you're kind of building your own muscle of noticing where resiliency is happening around you, where self-efficacy is happening around you. You're building grit in people. You're being a great example of that whole package of behaviors, from self-resilience to coaching resilience to organizational resilience.
And David, I mean, this time is just flying by. We want to make sure we get some time to see if there are any particular questions. We do want to do a final quick poll. Like, David and I are just curious, like, of these two practices, which one are you going to implement first? So are you going to fill your resiliency backpack? Or are you going to practice meaningful recognition? Hopefully you'll do both, but we want to challenge you. And so Matthew, if you'll put up that poll, we're just curious, which one are you going to implement first?
Well, Cheryl, while we're waiting for people to in the chat, maybe share some things they're going to do to fill their resiliency backpack, or maybe they want to offer some recognition to a coworker or a colleague when they get off the webinar. I'll share what I'm going to do, and that is that I'm going to work on practicing meaningful recognition of others. I know that's something that at Psychological Associates we're doing a lot of things fast right now. I mean, we are moving at light speed in a different way. You know, of course, business always moves fast, and we had been doing very busy before all this happened, but we're busy in a new way, in a different way now. And I've seen emails coming in from coworkers at late hours of the night and early hours of the morning. And everyone around me is pulling together as a team to accomplish our mission, to help others be great at work, be great leaders, contribute to the community. And it's really impressive to see some things that my colleagues are doing. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to work on meaningful recognition.
Fantastic. And it looks like we're like split like almost 50-50. So 53% are going to practice meaningful recognition and 51%. So that's, I think I predicted that there'd be a little bit more practicing outwardly focused than inwardly focused, but it's pretty much 50-50.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Interestingly enough, it looks like it's 53% and 51%, which is remarkable.
Yeah,
we're better than 100%.
Oh my goodness! Like I didn't even notice that. So we'll have to like double check how to Zoom polling work.
How do they add up their percentages? That's funny. That's funny. Oh, I see that Nurses Week is coming up, and some folks are going to practice recognizing nurses. That's perfect, because the research came from nursing. So
Absolutely.
what a wonderful thing to commit yourself to do.
Absolutely. And so before we hopefully have time to take at least a couple of questions, like, just know that you'll have our contact information you can reach out to David or to me. We will follow up with, links to the recording. One of our coworkers, we want to give a special shout out to him, Eric Briggs, led the research on a white paper that we published on this topic. So we will give you links to that. But we definitely want to end on this quote by Elizabeth Edwards. So David, if you could go back to that slide, I think it's like one of the most beautiful quotes that we came up with. And I think that given the challenge of all of us, given the current health and economic challenges we are facing, it really speaks to how we can all show up. And even we've highlighted this quite a bit, even in the midst of crisis, there's almost always good things, silver linings. So we know that from anecdotes shared in chat, and the stress and research on facing adversity can have positive impact. So again, it's always fun collaborating with you, David, and with all of our coworkers. There were a lot of people that did a lot of great work on this, and we thank you and we're grateful. And we hope, even though we started with a pretty high resiliency, I don't think anyone was in the low category. We really hope that this session has given your resiliency a boost and that you'll utilize it to really reach out to your coworkers and your teams and your families to boost their resiliency as well. So thank you.
I did see a question in the chat, and I think it got answered, but I'll just go, or in the Q&A, I'll go ahead and make sure that everyone has a chance to see it. The question was, what was the quote about feel the feeling? And it was, feel the feeling, choose the behavior. A simple piece of advice to build your own resilience and your emotion management skills. Matthew, good to see you back.
Hello. I just want to share, I'm going to say this out loud. My team at Focus is amazing, and everybody's working so hard to bring so much content. And if we're going to just be sharing kindness and sharing resiliency and sharing appreciation and gratitude, I want to say to my Focus team that I think you're amazing. So, yeah.
Great,
Fantastic.
Matthew. Great.
That's great. Way to illustrate that meaningful recognition. So,
Yeah.
And do we have any other questions coming in?
If there are questions, go ahead and put them in the comments now. I have a question that I'll start off with, which is if I'm feeling so low and I've gotten hit economically, I've gotten hit emotionally, and I don't see a way out, how do I bounce back from that? How do I start to bounce back?
That's a great question, Matthew. And Cheryl, do you mind if I jump in?
Please.
Yeah. So you're right that the unique challenge of COVID-19 is that it is multi-layered. It's not just hitting us in an emotional way because we're concerned about the world around us and people who are falling ill, who we care about. It's also hitting us economically. It's we're now socially isolated. We're in our homes and away from each other in our apartments. Some folks are dealing with food scarcity. Some folks are worried about paying rent. And so there's a lot of uncertainty out there. And that question of, wow, I'm really feeling overwhelmed and I'm seeing other people in my world overwhelmed. Where do I even start? I can speak from my experience, and then I'd love to hear what Cheryl, what you have to say and what other folks have to say in the chat. But to me, start small and start anywhere. One of the challenges of fixing problems sometimes is you think you have to have a perfect solution and go in a perfect order and get it all right along the way. And so sometimes you go, well, gosh, I don't even know where, I have no idea where to start. The problem's so big, it's overwhelming me. If you think about a garden and you go out and you look at it and there's a million weeds everywhere, and you think, oh, there's so many weeds, I don't even know which one to pick first. I'll just go back inside. I won't pick any weeds.
You may be talking about my backyard. I'm just going to say that out loud.
this time of year, a lot of people's backyards. But you know what you find if you're a garden, you go out and you pick one weed, and then you pick another weed, and then you pick another weed, and before you know it, after a couple hours, you've got a section that's looking pretty good. So start anywhere is the one thing. The other thing is keep it simple. Remember that there are skills you have and you want to put them to use. You want to put them to use as soon as you can and with as much skillfulness as you can bring. So take stock of the skills you have, cook a healthy meal, make your bed, clean your house, clean your apartment, call a friend, fix one problem at a time, starting with the basic ones and working your way up from there to the more complicated, the more complex. Cheryl, your thoughts?
I mean, the only thing that I would add, Matthew, is that, I encourage any of us who feel that way that we don't hesitate to reach out for help, that we call that friend who navigates things well, or we take advantage of the community resources that are available, and whether if we have an organization where they have an employee assistance program. So, we need to take care of our mental health through this, and we need to make sure that our basic needs are met. And there's a lot of great work and a lot of community building. And so I would encourage any of us who felt that way to not hesitate to ask for help.
And if I could say one thing, go ahead, Matthew.
Sure. Well, I guess just with that in mind, our leaders across the land who are having to make all kinds of decisions on the fly, difficult decisions, challenging decisions, where do they find resilience? Where do they bounce back? How do they get through this?
I would love to challenge all of us to practice giving meaningful recognition to the leaders of our organizations, because they are making some tremendously hard decisions. So those of you who picked that you wanted to start with that practice, I would encourage you to give that feedback up in your organization, because they need a boost, a resiliency boost, just like everyone else. So that would be my recommendation to help get started.
Yeah, and I would say that most likely there's a reason why leaders got to where they got in the first place. They probably have a backpack that has some skills in it already. I would encourage them to return to the basics, their core values, their wisdom, their lived experience, their savvy, and to remind themselves, they were entrusted with the positions they're in because they did some things right, Right,
yeah.
And so, hey, remember, people believe in you, and take stock, look back and say, gosh, what other challenges have I gotten through? Okay, I have some tools in my toolkit that can work. The third one I'd mention, is there are other leaders out there who are having to come up with new creative solutions. Reach out to those other leaders because maybe they've got an idea that could help your organization. So now more than ever, that Rolodex, that network of other leaders is so important.
Yeah. We have time for one more question. For people who may not actively ask for help, are there signs leaders can look for so they can be ready to provide assistance?
Yeah. Cheryl, you want to go first?
So first of all, I would encourage leaders, and if we are working remotely, that now is not the time to not have your regularly scheduled one-on-ones. So definitely maintain that connection. And just like you would if you were working side by side every day in the office, look to see, has their behavior dramatically changed? And to really, I think like one of the first responses to what do you do to build resiliency and others that came through the chat was to take the time to listen. So I would encourage you to really have an open conversation and just say, you know, you seem different. I know times are tough. Can you tell me what's going on? And just merely start and see where the conversation goes. David, what would you add?
Cheryl, you're so right. And that the thing to do is to look for change. I think sometimes we assume that the person will look sad or look anxious or kind of their performance might sag. But you know what? Other changes may actually be indicators that a person's struggling, that they're trying to do it all, that they're ramping up and volunteering for every last little thing that needs to be done, that the emails are coming in at 11 o'clock at night and 5 o'clock in the morning again. And you might kind of think, oh, I don't need to worry about that person. Their productivity is ramped up through the roof. But then you pause and reflect and say, well, maybe what they're doing isn't sustainable. Maybe they're struggling in a different sort of way. Maybe they're trying to run a sprint when it's really a marathon. And are they taking care of other things and attending to other things? And do they think they need to be superhuman right now? So Cheryl, I totally agree. Look for any change.
Yeah, I agree.
Friends, I want to say thank you so much for taking time and sharing with us. This has been really great. This is all part of our Elevate series. The Psychological Associates are planned to do a whole day's workshop seminar later down the road in the year. And I want to thank again Citi and Daugherty Business Solutions for making all of this possible. And if you have any further questions, you can email me at matthewk@focus-stl.com and I'll get them to the panelists and we'll get them answered. Otherwise, check our website, www.focus-stl.org, for our schedule of events. We have many more exciting webinars coming and lots more conversation. Thank you again, guys. And thanks to everybody who watched. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. All right. Thank you, Matthew. Take care.